Well, it's an awesome responsibility that faces this next group of people who are before you. They have to summarize what has happened in our day of Earth Dialogues and to lead us to the Earth Dialogue Declaration, which you will hear at the end. In many ways, this group has been the one leading us on the path all along to find a solution that formulates a way towards a more sustainable Earth and stimulates our citizens and our governments to action. Now, the kind of actions we know are necessary, many of us knew coming into this room. And what we have heard today has certainly been more about the immediacy of those threats and how to avert the ecological and environmental disasters that threaten everywhere. We've also heard more evidence today of some of the solutions that are working and what we as a group of committed individuals representing governments, NGOs, policymakers, regulators, and the leaders of tomorrow. What we can do is what we are now turning our attention to. We know it has to be integrated, coordinated, and a collaborative response. That was the purpose in being here, and that is the outcome we are seeking now. President Mikhail Gorbachev convened the first Earth Dialogues in Lyon in 2002, and there have been several since. And he convened us again today. He is a man who, in my opinion, cannot be celebrated enough for his leadership out of a global threat known as the Cold War and into the first global environmental movement, the Green Cross International. Many of us present are a part of Green Cross, and we congratulate GCI, Alexander Leotoll, its president, and all of the chapter leaders, many of whom are in this room over the last 20 years, on leading the conversations about what must be done and working with others to shape those solutions. President Gorbachev, we are all eager to hear the outcome and the purpose for which you gathered us, the declaration, which we'll hear later. But I would like to know at this point, what are your impressions of how well we have done in getting us to a declaration that leads to actions?
Добрый вечер.
Good evening.
Я очень впечатлен тем, что я
I am very much impressed
оказаться в центре каких-то
with
уникальных
what has been
дебатов
happening. I think that
о
I'm here
современном мире.
present at a very important and a very unique debate about the world today.
Я уже спрашивал президента Международного Зеленого Креста, будет ли это все расшифровано и
I've
будет ли
actually
издана книга.
asked the president of Green Cross International whether all the proceedings here are being recorded and whether there will be a book that will reflect these discussions.
Да, это будет все сделано.
And yes, this
Мое
will be done.
первое слово это благодарность
And first of
вам,
all, I would like to thank you all,
ибо все нашли возможным сказать
all of you who have
добрые
come,
слова в адрес
and all of you who have said some kind
тех,
words
кто начинал это движение.
about those of us who started this movement,
И 20 лет назад создали эту
about
великолепную
those who
организацию,
20 years ago
потенциал,
created
который еще только
this
начинает раскрываться.
wonderful
Я имею в виду
organization.
Международный Зеленый Крест.
I think that the potential of this wonderful organization is only beginning to be realized.
Я благодарю вас всех.
I'm speaking about Green Cross International, and I'm very grateful to all of you.
Знаете, я вчера несколько раз повторял.
Yesterday
Это не
I
мои слова.
repeated several times
Я их
the words
услышал
that are not mine,
раньше.
the words that I heard.
Все то, что удавалось
Years ago.
людям,
Everything
то, что удалось
that
нам
people, that mankind has been
в
able
рамках
to
Зеленого
achieve,
Креста,
everything that
Международного
we have been able to achieve within Green Cross International
сделать это тогда,
was done, was made possible
когда мы действовали вместе.
by working together.
Мне очень приятно,
It is,
вот
and I'm very
ораторы,
pleased
которые находились
that the speakers
на этом месте,
at the previous panel who spoke
выступая,
from this podium
каждый из них считал
all of them
нужным подчеркнуть это.
emphasized
Нам надо быть
this,
вместе.
the need to work together. We must work together.
Это должно и войти в наши итоговые документы.
And I think this must be part of our concluding document, concluding declaration.
Вместе мы одолеем.
Together
Справимся.
we will succeed.
Ибо большой потенциал заключен в тех,
There is a tremendous potential
входит в это движение.
in this movement and in the people who are part of this movement.
Я вас поздравляю с 20-летием Международного Зеленого Креста.
I congratulate you on the 20th anniversary of Green Cross International,
И хотел бы сказать,
and I would like to say
что я полностью разделяю
that I fully share
мысль о
the
новом этапе.
idea that
в
we
нашем
are
движении.
into a new phase, into a new
Центр
stage
тяжести
of our
должен
movement,
быть
where we must
перенесен на практическое
emphasize practical action,
воплощение
practical
идей,
implementation
которые
of
родились
those
за
ideas
эти годы.
that have emerged over these past years.
Пусть они сегодня еще не выкристаллизовались, пусть это еще
Some of those
какие-то контуры идей, но
Only
чувствуется,
exist
что
in
мы
outline,
стоим
but we
на пороге,
are capable, we
чтобы
have the
сделать, чтобы
potential, the
сделать
possibility of
открыть новый этап.
translating them into a new stage, into a new phase in our work.
Мне очень бы хотелось, чтобы отсюда после этого заседания
I very much would like
прозвучали слова,
this
которые бы были услышаны
to
в мире.
with an appeal that would be heard in the world.
И это мы делаем не для того, что мы так тщеславны.
And we are here, we are doing it not out of vanity.
Нет. Я думаю, потому что люди ждут
We are doing it
таких
because
действий,
I think that
таких
people
программ,
expect action,
которые бы
people expect
делали
programs
бы достойным, все более достойным
projects
человеческую
that
жизнь,
will make human life more dignified,
и жизнь наша не омрачалась тем,
that will make
о чем
sure
здесь шла
that
речь.
our life is not tainted, is not poisoned by the problems that we have discussed here.
Я не знаю, сколько мне удастся еще вместе с вами работать.
Frankly, I don't know how long I will be able to continue
Всё-таки
working with you.
Я же 9-й десяток разменял в своей жизни.
I am in my 80s, as you know.
Мне осталось только, что я сейчас приглашаю всех друзей,
However, I've been inviting
моих
all of my friends,
соратников по духу,
my co-workers,
по жизненному
people
выбору
with whom I share
на свое
the
90-летие.
inspiration in life. I've been inviting them to my 90th birthday.
Не буду скрывать, что это Я только хотел пояснить, вы поняли, что это хитрость моя.
I wanted to explain that I'm doing this out of cunning.
Но я когда так поставил свои жизненные планы,
I am doing this
То-
because by announcing these plans,
я опять ожил, и у меня есть
I am making myself live.
силы прибавились.
I am getting stronger by doing so, by
Давайте
saying
будем
this.
вместе,
So let us continue to be together,
ибо мы должны чувствовать,
because we need
мы должны
each other.
чувствовать, что мы все необходимы
We
друг
need
другу,
to feel the support of one another.
и объединять нужно нас сегодня действительно высшие человеческие
And
духовные
we must
ценности.
continue to be united by these highest
Это
values,
самое главное.
by the highest human values. This is the most important thing.
Я надеюсь,
I hope
что нам удастся
that we will
положить начало
be
новому этапу.
successful in
нашем
launching
движении.
this new stage in your movement, in our movement.
Желаю успеха.
I wish you success.
our success is more guaranteed now that we can be assured you have compelling reason to stay in leadership. And we will dance at your 90th birthday, all of us. For the interest of time, I'm going to ask you to...
Право об этом говорить,
Pat has the right to say this
что мы танцевали с ней на 75-летии,
because she danced with me on my 75th birthday.
и мы продолжили это на 80-летии.
We continued at my 80th birthday.
Я верю.
So I believe that.
I believe as well. I also believe that we have, as I said before, a couple of guests and others who can help us summarize some of what we've heard today, and their biographies in full are in your material, so I'm going to make their introductions brief. Her Excellency Roza Otunbayeva is the former president of Kyrgyzstan. And along with many other titles and responsibilities, she's considered the architect of that country's move from an authoritarian to a parliamentary democratic government. I would say, Madam President, you have taken on big challenges before. Some would say none bigger than changing a government. But you have listened today carefully as we have talked about the challenges still facing this environmental movement, this need of a collaborative action that literally does mobilize. So what are your recommendations based on what you have heard today, based on your learning from the past?
Thank you very much. I should go straight into the business and tell that today's conclusion session, and it's great privilege to be alongside with President Gorbachev. He was really our president. I am from the former Soviet Union, and I do remember when perestroika glasnost has started, then really he showed a leadership. He put our country over to openness, to democracy. New countries like mine, Kyrgyzstan, over the last 20 years we've been in quite a big difficulties. Today, yesterday and today, I've learned a great deal about the developments in the world and certainly environmental problems. I think it was very rewarding and thoughtful that we have a group of famous, distinguished scientists here, and their thoughts, their forecasts, their ideas are very important for all of us. We should have such a group of or such academics who would be visionaries, who would really give a thought for ideas, for actions, for everyone who takes a decision. This audience is full of NGOs, and when governments say that, look, let's first to engage with economy and then only to do something with ecology, then I do respect and I appreciate very much in every country, especially in developing countries. NGOs are in forefront of ecological movements and to solve the problems. And I do believe that any investment in NGOs, in environmental NGOs, are crucial and important. I want to stress my ideas and appreciation on the ideas of education. Everyone stressed education and education and education, and that is true. And nothing stays on place, everything moves. My foundation engaged with the preschool problems, and the science proved that preschool age is the most productive age. And I do believe that to convince little children to save the water, to do the right things toward to the nature. It is much easier than to do the same with the children 14 years or 20 years old. And I do believe now that we should do a lot of things toward to this age. Why not in the world all these TV movies, programs which we have, they would be translated into languages of many countries in the world, shown to the children, and free of charge if it is possible. We've been pleased yesterday to give a word, to be witnesses of the word which was given to the British telejournalist, and I do believe that sort of programs will be great. I do believe also that now there is a trend in the world to follow only sports events, and from one Olympic Games to another Olympic Games, and everyone invests, developing countries, emerging countries, they develop into the sport, such a construction and facilities. Why not to build more aquariums in the world? Why not to build more museums of natural science, museum of technique, to show to children, to adolescent children, what the world is about and how it comes. I got Pat a lot from this conference, from this today's discussion. I do believe that probably issues of poverty elimination have been lacking. We've been very much in the ocean of academic numbers and very impressive such facts. But really, how ecology and livelihood correlates, how to eliminate the poverty, I got not too much information about this. I would call to everyone to follow and to endorse movement of Muhammad Yunus with the social entrepreneurship. Why just a business for profit and profit and profit? And as you academics said here, of 5 planets as Earth will be not enough if we will follow the consumerism of the most developed countries. So social entrepreneurship will help to women, to poor people, to everyone, just really to live day by day and to get more jobs and to be engaged. I hope that all of us saving biodiversity. I agree, I absolutely support Mr. Cousteau regarding ocean. We should save the wild nature and wildlife. The presidents and prime ministers, they do not care about the numbers of wild animals. They do care about the productivity, about the GDP, about everything relates to the society. I do think that all of us, we should raise the awareness about this side of the life. And in my country, for example, this October, we'll conduct international conference to save snow leopards. And if we'll do this piece by piece, then I think it will also help to the world. Thank you.
Thank you. One subject that you mentioned, I hope we'll have time to revisit again, because it seems the one sector that wasn't discussed in depth, and that is the power to optimize and unleash media and technology. It's my sector, but we come at a time when the world is globally connected. We have no excuses for not knowing what's going on everywhere. And why can't we, as a movement, find ways to unleash and optimize that power more fully? And you referenced it with the power of television and documentaries. And actually, I know a great deal more about the Seychelles than I did a year ago because of a documentary about the Seychelles on the front lines of climate change and its impact. So we're very honored today to have the former president of the Seychelles, James Mancham. He's often called the Ernest Hemingway of the Indian Ocean, and it's not just because he looks a bit like him, I think. It's because, along with being the first president of that independent nation, he's also a celebrated writer and poet. He received so many awards, and I know as you sat here today, you must have looked at this both from the prism of your government experience, but also from the prism of arts and culture and all the other parts of our lives that need to be integrated to move this change that we are looking for. So do you feel good about where we are and how we have engaged that part of the community?
I have been most impressed by general discussions and all the very pertinent points made by delegates at this conference. However, I am of the opinion that nothing much will happen unless we move back into a situation where right is considered might. Traditionally, this is the way we were educated to believe. But over recent years, we have seen right is might being replaced more and more by a philosophy of might is right instead of right is might. This philosophy, might is right, is very disturbing, very perturbing. Against this background, nation-states keep on spending a lot of money on defense budgets. If all this money could be spared, could go in the direction of social development projects, the build-up of reservoirs, schools, etc., how much more would we have achieved than just in the building up of battleship, etc. And I dare say that unless we converge on the policy of right is might and do away with the policy of might is right, we will never achieve to have a ban on nuclear weapons which we seek. Much of this, of course, is based on the lack of trust among nations. It is therefore important that we, right from the beginning, from where we are, accept the situation as we see it, in honesty, and clearly behave in the manner that we are prepared truly to put the interests of the world before the interests of our nation. In this respect, I believe perhaps we have got too many politicians in the world today. What the world needs more than ordinary politicians is statesmanship, statesman. A politician is interested in power, in the next election, in the benefits and advantages which power confers. The statesman is interested in the next generation, in the transformation of society. He is not interested in power at all costs. This is what many nations require today, and we do hope that we can promote this notion to become accepted as we move along towards trying to solve the issues which are before us. We must also give a value to what we call peace of mind in the evaluation of an individual quality of life. You may have your bed made of gold, but if when you get on it, you cannot sleep, that fellow sleeping on the floor, but who sleeps good, has a better quality of life than you. The hour calls for deep thinking. When we see some of our American friends who work so hard throughout their life to make a lot of money, once they made the money, what is their dream? To try and find a piece of land on some distant island to be able to live like a simple fisherman. Some others, for lack of a level of spirituality, what we find them doing? Going to India to look for a guru. So we must accept that there are certain values in quality of life. It is not right for us to promote the presumption that if you live the village life and you have yourself an apartment on the 50th floor of a big city, that you are nearer to God and that life is better. So there is therefore a need for us, when we evaluate people's quality of life, to take into account several factors like peace of mind, etc. Perhaps there is a need for us to have a more holistic approach to the problem of our world. When we speak in terms of statesmanship, it is statesmanship which have produced personalities like Nelson Mandela, and which has produced the great man we have today in President Mikhail Gorbachev. They have seen beyond the immediate problem. They have gone beyond the sort of influences which surrounded them at the time of their decision. Mandela has promoted reconciliation after many years of vicious system of apartheid, for which he is greatly remembered today. And we know President Gorbachev, different circumstances, had the initiative to promote the philosophy of Glasnost and Perestroika, which has brought about such fundamental changes in our world today. We should look forward to the day when their dreams, our dreams, become realizable, where we human beings are ready to put the interest of the universe before our own interests. Thank you.
Thank you, President Mancham, for reminding us of that connection between the values of the way we live and the values that we are trying to preserve and conserve and perpetuate on the planet. And those were the very principles behind President Gorbachev's founding of Green Cross International. And both of our speakers have made again this connection to the paradigm shift that's been referred to so many times from this podium today, the paradigm shift in language and the connections we make, and then how those are communicated for very specific actions and resolutions. So perhaps it's time to hear our Earth Dialogues Declaration, and then if there's time remaining, we'll come back to our panelists, including President Gorbachev, and ask him for his thoughts on the results of our work today. I want to read the declaration from this Earth Dialogues convening, Martin Lees. He's the former Secretary General of the Club of Rome, and among his many leadership positions, he serves on President Gorbachev's high-level task force on climate change. Martin?
Thank you, Pat. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Dear Mr. President, I would like to congratulate the International Green Cross on its achievements under your leadership over the past 20 years. And if I may be allowed one short personal comment, my wife and I were in the Kremlin in January 1990 when President Gorbachev first announced his idea to found something called the Green Cross. So for me, this is a very special opportunity to be here again after 20 years. I will be presenting to you this declaration. I apologize in advance because it has become longer during the day for the very simple reason that we must do justice to the many important ideas and comments which have been presented during your discussions. It is based on the same 4 themes of your agenda and also the themes of the excellent background document prepared by the International Green Cross, particularly Fiona Harvey, over the past few months. It is a very dense agenda, and therefore it is a little bit longer than a declaration would normally be, but I believe it does justice to what you have all been calling for. I now have the honor, ladies and gentlemen, of presenting to you the Earth Dialogues Geneva Declaration on action for a peaceful, just, and sustainable world. We, the participants of the Earth Dialogues 2013, assembled in Geneva, the cradle of modern multilateralism, are deeply concerned by the failure of the world community to act decisively to avert the mounting risks of ecological, environmental, and climatic disaster. We conclude that innovative thinking, renewed engagement, and enhanced cooperation are needed to break the deadlock of entrenched but inadequate ideas, political stagnation and international fragmentation, and now the re-emergence of militarization in thinking and action. We are decided to work together to achieve the aims and actions set out in this Geneva Declaration. Economic growth has generated enormous progress for hundreds of millions of people across the world who enjoy a standard of living unprecedented in human history. However, this undoubted progress has been achieved at a high cost in terms of environmental degradation, and millions remain mired in poverty and deprivation, excluded from the benefits and opportunities of the modern world. We are over-exploiting the resources of our planet and degrading the terrestrial and ocean ecosystems which are the life support systems of humanity. The impacts of human activities are now on such a scale as to affect the behavior of the ecological and physical systems of the planet. To continue on the present business-as-usual path of consumer-driven, resource and energy-intensive growth will very likely lead to disaster. The present unsustainable patterns of consumption and production must change. We need to develop and implement more responsible strategies for growth and development. The world community is confronted today by an array of unprecedented risks and connected systemic challenges which will determine the prospects for progress and peace. We need new models, new patterns of cooperation and governance, and carefully considered coherent strategies which integrate the economic, social, environmental and security facets of policy if we are to understand and manage the behavior of the complex systems of the modern world. Rising inequality and unemployment, urgent and intensifying problems of food and water security, marginalization of the poor, growing military expenditure, and dangerous instabilities and vulnerabilities in the world economic and financial systems together demonstrate that our present model of economic growth is failing. Looking ahead, the rising demand of an increasing world population of between 9 and 10 billion people by 2050 and a growing middle class will exacerbate the overuse and destruction of vital resources and will intensify competition and the risks of conflict. A high-level task force on the urgent realities of climate change convened by President Gorbachev has reported that in spite of 20 years of negotiations, climate change emissions have now risen to dangerous levels with a growing risk of destabilizing the global climate. World leaders must face these realities and move beyond short-term economic concerns to agree on concerted action for the transformational changes which are needed to achieve a more inclusive, just and sustainable path of growth and world development. On the positive side, practical examples across the world at the level of nations, states, cities and enterprises all demonstrate that there are exciting opportunities to build the resource-efficient, low-carbon, fair and inclusive economies and societies of the future, and they show that the initial costs of transformation are small in relation to the longer-term benefits of moving towards sustainability. Continued progress is still possible. History can be shaped. As the long-entrenched belief in the efficiency of economic markets has weakened, there is now an opportunity to advance new ideas and to restore a judicious balance between the dynamism of the market and an active role of government as custodian of the common interest. We have the scientific expertise and the experience to act. Resources of all kinds, knowledge, creativity, innovation in communications and information processing, technology, organizations and finance could all be made available if a high enough priority is given to generating employment, eradicating poverty, and preserving a viable environment and a stable climate. The fundamental issue we face is that we do recognize the challenges to our survival, we do have the capabilities to resolve our problems, but we are failing to act. Perhaps because we are trying to resolve the issues of the 21st century with the ideas and institutions of the 20th. Leaders should define a hopeful vision of the future which can stimulate enthusiasm throughout society to build a better world. They should resist the efforts of vested interests to confuse and obstruct public awareness of the need for change, and they should build wide public support for the necessary action. A Green Cross review of 20 years of efforts to move towards sustainable development shows a weakening of cooperation between the first Rio Earth Summit in 1992, characterized by wide, high-level participation, real commitment and hope for the future, and the 2012 Rio Conference on Sustainable Development. At a time of transformation in the structure of power across the world and of intensifying environmental, economic and political stresses, the framework of multilateral cooperation and of international law must be revitalized to achieve concerted action in the face of common challenges to avert threats to peace, such as we now see in Syria, and to strengthen the common commitment to the global partnership for development. This will require an upgraded approach to multilateralism, which must extend cooperation beyond governments to integrate all the stakeholders in the modern international system, to fully engage civil society and the private sector, and to enhance partnerships and incentives for investment and for the rapid dissemination of environmental technologies. Civil society groups focused on sustainability, poverty, and peace and security should consolidate their activities to maximize their impacts. The framework of international law will have to be strengthened and legally binding agreements rapidly engaged, especially for climate change mitigation and adaptation, and for the effective supervision and regulation required to stabilize the international financial system. Much can be improved through the efforts of individuals and at the local level, but these incremental changes will not be sufficient. Major transformational changes are needed, and for these, statesmanship, solidarity, cooperation, and effective governance are essential. The issues we face today are on such a scale and intensity that those nations which recognize the seriousness and urgency of the existential threats to the future of humanity must move ahead in the common interest, leaving aside those who do not. We call upon governments, civil society, businesses, and trade unions to recognize the scale, the urgency, and the connectedness of the intensifying economic, social, environmental, political, and security issues which threaten the prospects of present and future generations. We propose the following lines of action. A growth model based on economics and finance first, with people and nature considered as of secondary importance, is a bankrupt strategy in the modern world. We therefore call on governments, academia, and civil society to move beyond GDP as the primary measure of real progress, and to work urgently towards a new approach to achieve balanced, qualitative growth, development, and globalization, with sustainable human progress at their heart. We underline the need to adapt national policies, budgets, and national accounts to take full account of the social and employment facets of policy and of natural capital and resource depletion, pollution, and carbon emissions. We call on government, business, and civil society to question the centrality of material consumption as a value in our societies. The stimulation of consumption should not be the principal driver of growth. Economic growth and finance should, in fact, be seen not as ends in themselves, but as instruments to build the real economy and to create jobs, and thus to achieve the higher goals of society. There is no alternative to reining in the excessive resource use of the rich and to adopting new strategies to meet the needs and aspirations of the underprivileged within the boundaries of a fragile planet. We call on governments and international organizations and the corporate sector to press ahead with the structural changes in economic and energy systems and in the incentive structures and regulations which are essential to drastically reduce the consumption of resources and the related pollution and waste, and to cut emissions to a level which will avert the increasing risk of catastrophic climate change. The time has come to decouple the exploitation of resources and pollution from industrial output by radical improvements in resource efficiency, by the encouragement of the circular economy, and through business models and fiscal and social policies and incentives which favor employment and environmental responsibility. We call for the strengthening of basic and applied research and of education to develop and disseminate the breakthrough solutions which will be essential to master global challenges, and we call also for explicit measures to ensure that the insights and evidence established by independent scientific research on emerging global issues are properly considered in the formulation of policy. We call on all countries to enhance their efforts to overcome the present blockages, failures and delays in multilateral cooperation by formulating new patterns of collaboration and new alliances of the willing, so as to revitalize the international system to meet the intensifying challenges of the 21st century. This will include verifiable, action-oriented, sustainable development goals to achieve the post-2015 Global Development Agenda. Finally, we call on leaders throughout the world to focus and to act urgently on 3 existential threats to the future of humanity: to avert the risk of irreversible climate disruption, to reverse the destruction of critical ocean and terrestrial ecosystems, and to achieve full nuclear disarmament. These actions are essential if we are to preserve the opportunity to build together a world of progress, justice, human rights and peace, which are the foundations of sustainable development. That concludes the reading of the declaration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin Lees, for that very eloquent reading of our declaration, and realizing that we're all hearing this for the first time, including our guest on the panel, and we are close to closing time, and we want to leave time for the chairman of Green Cross to give us concluding remarks. But I feel like I must ask our 3 panelists, give you an opportunity briefly to share your responses. President Otunbayeva, may I start with you?
Thank you. I think this is a very strong, comprehensive document, and I'm sure that it will have an echo in the world, and I'm pleased that we've been part of such a deep and very sophisticated discussion. Thank you.
President Mancham?
I share the view of the Lady President, and I believe no stone should be left unturned in our endeavor to get this Geneva Declaration, to bring it to the awareness of the people, the schools, as we attach so much importance to the new generation. We live in a time also, unfortunately, where we read about such a thing as a policy of mind control, which is very disturbing. We must make use of the technology which is available to expand the declaration and to make it as educative as possible vis-à-vis those people who will bring about a better world tomorrow.
And now to the man who has shaped transformative change throughout his leadership, President Gorbachev.
Я просил бы вас поддержать этот документ.
I would like to ask you to support this declaration.
Очень важно, чтобы первые его шаги жизни этого документа здесь они начинаются, в этом месте, на территории Объединенных Наций.
It's very important for this declaration, for this important document, to take its first steps here on the territory of the United Nations.
Были бы поддержаны участниками
And I want these first steps to be
и
supported
стали
by our participants
основой деятельности для общества.
and to become the basis of our work for the benefit of our societies.
Я думаю, что это перейти на такую систему, на такой подход организации жизни и функционирования нашего сообщества человеческого, это величайший подвиг и очень непростая задача.
I think that transitioning to this new way of living, of organizing our human community, is a great challenge and will be a great accomplishment.
Мы должны будем поддерживать определенный уровень жизни современного общества и решать уже новые задачи, открывать пути. Мы не можем отказаться от того, что мы делаем сейчас, с точки зрения поддержания жизни,
While maintaining
защиты экологии. Но мы должны прямо сказать, что выбора у нас нет. Выбор состоит в том, чтобы мы встали на этот путь развития.
while maintaining a certain standard of living that we have today, we must also think of the future and of living in a new way. We must continue to do what we can to protect the environment, but we must be fully aware that the only solution, the only way forward in the future is to change the patterns, to change the model of life as stated in this declaration.
Я думаю, что нам бы следовало сейчас дать добро в принципиальном плане этому документу
And I think that we should now
и направить его во все инстанции центры, а самое главное сделать его достоянием всего народа.
I think we must now approve this declaration, and I think we must give it a push, give it a go-ahead, so that it reaches all the appropriate bodies and the governments, and also to make the people aware of this important declaration.
Мы приглашаем всех тех, кто способен улучшить этот документ, высказать свои предложения.
And let us invite all of those who want to improve this declaration, to improve this document, to make their proposals.
Наверное, мы должны создать международный совет, международную организацию, это мы должны подумать, которая бы управляла процессом реализации этого документа и продвижения уже. Нам нельзя терять время.
I suggest that we consider creating an international council or panel that would promote this document, that would work to assure implementation of this declaration. I think that we must not waste any time, and we should go ahead and work on the basis of this declaration.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Gorbachev. And now to conclude the Earth Dialogues, which were convened by Green Cross International, its board chairman, Jan Kulczyk.
Dear Mr. Director General of the United Nations Office at Geneva, whom I want to thank again for the opportunity to have the meeting in the celebrated, wonderful venue at United Nations. Honored panelists who have provided enlightening discussion today, distinguished guests, all my colleagues and friends from the Green Cross Network. In the 1980s, two of my friends Mikhail Sergeyevich, в надежде, что я могу так сказать. President Mikhail Gorbachev and Lech Wałęsa, President of Poland, proved that a change for the better was possible. As Rabbi Avram Settendorf said yesterday, real leaders are those who are able to convince masses to change the world. Those can be called leaders. I am grateful for all that did for us. Let us draw conclusion from their wisdom. We must remember that today's world has to be built by the young generation. It's them who have to be held responsible for it. Professor Buzek, former president of the European Parliament, said yesterday that views needed to be changed so that we could act better. Though the Earth Dialogues initiative is a good platform for dialogues between those who wish to discuss and create a better future. Today we also can contribute to developing a movement for environmental protection in line with the ideas on the founders of Green Cross. It is just the kind of materials action the Geneva and the United Nations have been planned host for many years, which is needed now to respond to the changes of today. For the first place, peace. Second, security, energy policy, climate changes, green growth. All the issues are real and present. Nice word, cliché will remain such unless filled in with facts. However, it has been proven otherwise. Over the last 30 years, the numbers of strongest hurricanes has doubled. Greenland lost 140 billion tons of ice over the last 20 years. If the emissions are not substantially reduced in the next 25 years, million more people will become impoverished, and additional 75 million people will become climatic refugees. If we wish to think and dream about the economic growth, we need to treat ecology seriously. Ecology and social aspects must be included in the economic calculation. Without that, I will remain only a myth, a dream. The economic calculation has to be made for decades and centuries ahead. That is why it is important that entrepreneurs and business people take part in this process. Without them will be not success. Power generation underlining economic growth must be replaced with green power. Therefore, we expect governments to treat the subject seriously, not just verbally but also in legislation. In order to have our dreams come true, we need to change the hierarchy values, the way we construct the economic calculation perception of the world. I have a dream that the Green Cross become a leader in thinking and perceiving in the world. Being one family is not a pleasure, but a commitment. Peter Drucker noted that management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things. The conference has to be dedicated to exacting putting the right things on our agenda. I would like to thank all the perception on the Earth Dialogues for accepting our invitation to be here. Thank you all. Thank you, President Gorbachev. Thank you, all friends, ladies and gentlemen, for your dedication, commitment and interest. Sorry that I need to say this conference now is finished. Thank you.
I would just say, in closing, I want to thank our panelists and remind us that we do not inherit the earth, we borrow it for our children. Go forward and make that a better place.